Hello, YouTube. Welcome to my channel, and I guess this is my first video I'm going to be putting up here for Spellforce and for content in general. So today I have for you a Spellforce video focused around human builds. So where this idea came from for me originally was when you're often looking at RTS games and builds in general, something that you see when you're looking at RTS data, right? And people talking about RTS games in general is with real-time strategy, oftentimes people are looking for something to validate their own beliefs, right? They're looking for, I think this thing is too good, I think this thing is bad. And so oftentimes people come to conclusions that are at best hyperbolic, and at worst they're just, toxic and pushing narrative that I don't think is particularly helpful. So today, what I'm trying to do, instead of focusing on arbitrary values or messing with any particular conclusions, is instead I'm trying to create a idea for a litmus test that if other people want to try it out, it would be awesome. But this is something I think that will just put helpful information out into the Spellforce community, and in general would be something that I think more people, should they want to try to do something like this, would actually be able to put information out there that would be helpful for new and older players alike, as we're trying to navigate this game and figuring out what actually is going to take this game to the next level in terms of strategy construction and actually building an overall healthier game environment for people to learn and to get better at. I present to you today the 10-minute build test. So what is the 10-minute build test? So the 10-minute build test is designed to test two things over a 10-minute test period against a passive AI. Okay, the first thing it's measuring is population. The second thing it's measuring is total resources collected. So what are you actually doing during the 10-minute build test? So the idea is every 10-minute build test, you are essentially executing a build order. And during that build order, during the 10-minute build test, you are every minute, from minute 3 to minute 10, you are measuring all of the resource buildings you are collecting and building along the way, all of the barracks you're building along the way. You're also measuring the population, okay, of military units that you're building, and your tier 2 tech timing. Now, what exactly is the point of all this, right? Like, why are we doing this build test? So the idea is when you're looking at these two variables, you're measuring essentially two things, right? What is the power spike of that build as we're going through the build order? What is the different power spiking of population comparatively to other build orders, right, for those factions? And are there any builds that are obviously superior or inferior comparatively when you're looking at these two factors, right? The ultimate two things that really do matter in a game are resources collected, right, and population counts, because those two things are fundamentally what drive games forward. Who has the bigger army versus who has the bigger economy, and how those two things interact, right? So I have 5 builds for you today that I'm going to be testing and that I've tested using this 10-minute build method. So what I've done was I've selected the map Jungle Crossroads, right? I selected Jungle Crossroads because it has all the resources in all the sectors, okay? So it's super easy to expand quickly and essentially do these tests optimally. It also is something where you can get an arbitrary number of sectors to do this test very quickly. So what I settled on was 5 expansion sectors plus my main, so 6 total sectors. This is because on most 1v1 maps, you can assume that you'll get about 5 or 6 sectors. If you think about most of the 1v1 map pool, it's close enough. And so the idea behind this is something that you could replicate in a normal ladder game. This is something that's relatively non-prohibitive. So in general, the idea behind this test is to mimic environments for build orders, not necessarily provide the optimal booming strategy that would be unfair to the aggressive strategies, and not provide something that's too choked, which would be unfair towards the macro strategies. So I settled on 5 sectors plus your mains for 6 total. Okay, each build order is with the Wolfguard commander. All she's doing is capturing the sectors, killing whatever creep she can in whatever order she can, and then is just going to sit at a rally point. She is not going to do anything the rest of the game. The scout I start with, I'm going to use to pull the 2 undead camps, and then I will essentially kill the scout. So The scout is not going to be part of the population count, which is important. You don't want the scout polluting that data. So what we do then from the time that Wolfguard finishes doing this up until minute 10 is we are just going to macro as best as I can. I'm going to build units whenever I can. If I need billets, I will build those. I'm going to attack whenever I need to hit that timing. And the idea is I'm just going to play the build order as optimally as possible. Now, this is the squishiest part of the test because different people have different definitions of what an optimal build order is. So in general, what I'm trying to do here is either build as many units as possible or tech as fast as possible, depending on sort of the spirit of the build order. Now, you will find that that leads to some surprising results here, especially with some tried and true build orders. Let's go into why I selected these parameters, right? So why only 10 minutes? Games get too weird past 10 minutes, right? So 10 minutes, I think, is a pretty reasonable amount of time to say this is a relatively normal opening. You don't have to make too many decisions in your build order in the first 10 minutes. Obviously, if you're getting harassed, you're going to try to stop that. But in general, your 10-minute build order is going to be something that you can essentially do every single game. So 10 minutes, I think, is a good number. You don't have to worry about too many dynamic things happening after 10 minutes. Why these 5 build orders? So these 5 build orders, I think, are the most common that you'll see for Spellforce as a humans player. They're relatively common. So these 5, I think, are pretty straightforward to test. Finally, why didn't you do something different? You know, why did you do it this way? Why did you not do this or that? I'd be very open to feedback on this. If people have better ideas, you know, shoot me a message on Discord, drop something in the comments. But this is just something I thought of and thought I would go to test. So I try to keep it as simple as possible. This is really easy to replicate if you want to do it for any of the other 5 factions. The idea behind it is it's supposed to be really easy to replicate, right? This is something you could do with any faction, and you just sort of get a general idea of what you're working with. So what 5 builds did we do? I have 5 build orders here today. Essentially, we're going to start with the most aggressive, and then we're going to go into the most macro-oriented. This is just sort of off the cuff. This is not looking at the data. This is just sort of conceptually how people think of the 5 builds. So for the 5 builds, we have the old style 2 wood, 2 food tech. Okay. Then we have the new style, which I'm giving credit to Galactic. He and I both worked on this build. He put a lot of work into it. I did some polishing on it, but this is, I'm calling the Galactic 2 wood, 2 food. Credit to Galactic, Spellforce 3 player, very good player. Helped with this build order, so we're calling this the Galactic 2 wood, 2 food. The third build we are trying today is the standard old school 4 racks. This is sort of the default humans build order that was common when the game first came out and sort of is considered the vanilla ice cream of humans build orders. We have the Naka 5 racks. This is the video that Nakamura RTS put out on his YouTube channel for the humans intro Spellforce build guide. So he put this out when Spellforce 3 Reforced came out. This is supposed to be a easy, straightforward build for new players to jump in and start laddering with. This is sort of a middle of the road, just infantry spam into quicker tech. And then the final build order is my build order that I use for quick macro games. I'm calling it the best friend of, or the BFE 6 racks. So this is a macro build order designed to go to quick tier 2 as fast as possible. So let's get into the results here. And I really just want to kind of highlight a couple of things here. You'll notice I have these charts here. And essentially what these charts are showing are the 10-minute population test. It also talks about the 10-minute total resources and the 10-minute tier 2 timings. I think those 3 data points are probably the most important. They sort of collate all the raw data into something that's actually useful that you can think of as most important. So what did we find out here? Well, the biggest data point that I think we're going to take away from this is that the 4 racks is bad. The traditional 4 racks build, sort of going 2 woodcutters, a stone cutter, and a food in the main, into stone, food, wood, into 2 racks, is really bad. I assume this is just because of overall, over time, this build order just kind of, As variables got tweaked inside of the game and as cleaner builds came around, I think we just found that this build's bad. It's when you look at the population graph, right? It has the lowest 10-minute pop timing. It literally never has any strong population timing. It literally is the weakest for producing units out of any of the build orders, right? If we look at the overall resources for it, it comes in at second worst, significantly behind even the 2 wood, 2 food Galactic build which is an aggressive timing. This has worse resource collection than that. And when we look at the overall tier 2 timings, it's still nearly a minute and a half slower, or a minute and 10 seconds, 70 seconds slower than the 6-Rex timing and about a minute slower than the 2 wood, 2 food tech, right? So the 4-Rex is by far and away our worst build order, which was shocking to me. This was considered sort of the bread and butter humans build. This build is shockingly bad when it stacks up to the other builds. It never has a population advantage. It has a terrible tech timing, and it has a horrendous economic timing. So if nothing else, don't do the 4-Rex. It's really bad. Now, let's look at the other surprisingly bad build order. This is the sort of tech 2 wood, 2 food, right? This is sort of your 2 wood, 2 food inside of your main stone food racks, right? This build is also really bad. If we look at the overall timings on this, it's strictly worse than the Galactic build in basically every single way. It only has about a 2 population advantage at minute 4, but realistically think that's 1 infantryman, so it's probably just a small timing thing, maybe a 5-10 seconds timing difference. By minute 6, the Galactic build has nearly double. I want to say that again. The Galactic 2 wood, 2 food has nearly double the traditional 2 wood, 2 food build. That's absurd. That's insane. By minute 8, that discrepancy has gone down, but by minute 9, it's nearly double again. Right? We're talking about a 30 supply difference at minute 9, and that holds steady into minute 10. So if you're looking for an aggressive opener, the traditional tech 2 wood, 2 food is terrible compared to the new Galactic build. Now, we'll go into the Galactic build later on in this video, but I did want to talk a little bit more about when you're looking at overall resources and the timings for tech. So keep in mind, this build, the tech 2 wood, 2 food is designed to put pressure on early, quick tech into tier 2, and then you're going to go into infantry upgrades and try to smash your opponent. This build, by far, had the worst economy. It was even worse than the 4-Rex, and it was nearly 100 total resources worse than the 4-Rex. It's almost 150 resources worse than the tech timings. 170 or so. 170 resources worse than the tech timings and sort of the middle of the road NACA 5-Rex is horrendous, right? And if we actually look at the overall tech timings, it's still slower than the 6-Rex. So the big macro build order timing, right? If we go back at the population graph, right, and we look here, you can see that the big macro play, the 6-Rex play, you're only lagging behind really till minute 6. By minute 7, you're only 7 pop behind. By minute 8, that's 6. By minute 9, that difference is gone, right? So you're talking about maybe a 3-minute window where you have maybe 8 more supply in exchange for for 170 less resources by minute 10 and a worse tech timing. So the traditional 2 wood, 2 food build, also trash. Do not do it. It's a bad build now. We have better builds. That build's also dead, so I would not recommend that either, just looking at the numbers here. So I was pretty surprised to see both of those, both the 4-Rex and the fact that the 2 wood, 2 food traditional tech build, both of those are terrible. That's kind of shocking to me. So now I want to talk about the 3 builds we have left, because this is, I think, where the meat of this video is. So if we look at these 3 that we have left, we have the NACA 5-Rex, the 6-Rex, and the 2 wood, 2 food Galactic build, right? So if we're looking at those, and we're looking at those 3 builds, what exactly are we seeing as a result, and what should you pick as your build order of choice? So these three builds, I think, are the builds that you pick depending on what your strategy is. None of these builds is superior necessarily. I think you have your aggro build, I think you have your tempo build, and I think you have your macro build, right? Let's talk about the differences. I want to start with the Galactic 2-Wood 2-Food. So the Galactic build, far and away, if we're looking at population count, this is your aggressive build. This stomps all of the other builds when it comes to population. It is nearly double any of the other builds other than the 2-Wood 2-Food tech, which is ostensibly the same strategy. It's just significantly worse, right? So this build is significantly stronger, nearly the entire 10-minute stretch, I would argue for. And the economics behind it are actually quite solid. It's only 55, let's say 55 resources total behind the tempo and the quick tech build, right? So this is actually pretty solid in terms of both population and economy. So what are you sacrificing here? Well, really what you're sacrificing is your tech timing. If you're looking at the macro build, this comes in 2 minutes and 10 seconds. You're clicking on tier 2 after a macro build would. So 2 minutes and 10 seconds on the click, right? So that means that the macro player will have Iron Mines started a full 2 minutes beforehand. That is a huge difference, especially if we're talking about overall boom economy, being able to macro up and get additional iron bases down, getting everything upgraded in terms of sector centers. That's a huge difference, right? Now, I would say with this Galactic build, keep in mind the idea behind this build is you want to smash people over the head with it. You're trying to win the game in tier 2, right? You're trying to be really aggressive. You're trying to trade out. You're trying to upgrade all your units into iron and just win the game. So the build is, I think, really solid. I will be posting more information on the build order in a future video where I will do the walkthrough of these 3 strong builds that I'm talking about. And I'll also link something, a document showing actually the build order. So this build, very strong, awesome, great aggressive build. Now let's talk about the Naka 5 racks. There's already a very helpful video on this, on how to do it. If you go to Nakamura RTS's YouTube channel and look up the Human Build Order Guide, this is the build. I followed it to a T. This build also quite strong. This is, I would say, the most middle of the road build. This essentially is confirming that Naka was dead on the money. This is a great build order if you're new to Spellforce and you want to figure out how to play humans. This is a great build order for it. If we look here at the population overall, the population, we see that the 5 racks is essentially keeping pace with everything except for the Galactic 2-Wood 2-Food build. And by the 10-minute mark, it has a 12 pop increase over the 6 racks and ostensibly the other 2 builds that we're talking about that are bad. So this is a good pressure build. It's not quite as aggressive as the Galactic build, but this actually leads to something quite interesting. If we look at the total resources collected, in exchange for approximately 20 supply or so, you're gaining about 50 additional resources. And if we look at the tech timings, you're gaining about a minute on the tech timing, right? So the tech timing is about a minute worse. You're equaling the 6 racks overall resource economy, which was staggering to me. I was shocked that it actually collected the same resources. You save about a minute on the all-in tech timing, right? So you're about a minute behind on that, which is pretty good. So this is a nice, I think the data proves this, this is a nice middle-of-the-road build order, right? This is a good build order for someone who is not wanting to commit to a 2-Wood 2-Food build. Maybe the map doesn't support it. Maybe it's something like Windwall Forest where you just don't have the food to support a 2-Wood 2-Food build, but you still want to put pressure on your opponent with 4 racks and you want to pump infantrymen and you want to smack them in the face. Good build for that. So finally then, I want to talk about the final build order, sort of on the edge of the scale. We started with aggressive, then we went to tempo. Now I want to go into the 6 racks. So this is the best friend of 6 racks. This is my build order. Sort of I've massaged this, and this is sort of what I've come up with. The idea behind this is you want to build your barracks on the 6th sector. You're giving yourself extra time to macro. You're wanting to stick on 2 barracks for as long as possible. And the idea is you want a quick tech as quick as you can to tier 2. And then you want to snowball that tier 2 tech either into some upgrades and some keepers, or just go immediately tier 3. This is a super defensive build order. You're trying to tech as quick as you can and get to tier 3 as quick as you can, where you're trying to get to your champions and your mentalists and flag bearers and things like that. So what does this build order look like? Well, we can see that even though this is a quick tech build order, it still matches supply pretty reasonably with both the 4 racks and the tech 2 wood 2 food. This, I think, was the nail in the coffin for both of those crappy builds, right? Because I am macroing here with this build order. You're trying to go as big as possible, and you are still managing to keep pace with ostensibly these aggressive build orders, and that's not great. I mean, if we look here at minute 7, you are only 7 supply down from the aggressive, ostensibly 2 wood 2 food build order. That's pretty crummy. If we look at the overall resources, like I mentioned earlier in the Naka part, for the Naka 5 racks, the 6 racks build is equal. So you actually are matching resources here. Now, something I do want to point out and is not reflected in this chart is how at the 10-minute mark, this build order has 3 completed iron mines. The only other build order that got close to that was the Naka 5 racks had 2 completed iron mines. So this is definitely a stronger iron build and a stronger sector upgrading build. It works great on big maps with a lot of iron, so it works well on jungle crossroads, for example, where you can sort of spread out and upgrade really well. I also want to point out, this is the quickest tech timing. 7 minutes, 5 seconds on the tier 2 up is fast, right? Obviously, this is in ideal conditions. This is a quick tier 2 tech. This is also, if we're looking at the 7 minutes and we go back to the population graph, you're clicking up with 18 supply, which is pretty weak. That's 9 infantrymen, but 9 infantrymen compared to the 5 racks, which is only 22 infantrymen at the time, you're actually able to keep pace reasonably well here, even against an aggressive tier 1 player, a tempo tier 1 player, I should say. Now, if you were playing against the Galactic build and you were teching at tier 2, you are nearly doubled in supply here, right? So you're in way more trouble if you're playing against an aggressive Human's Mirror. But for what it is as a tech, I think this is the best tech order you can do. I think this is a pretty strong way to tech up quickly. You're not wasting your time. I think this is about as lean as you can get without adding bloat of like adding your barracks at the 7th sector. That just adds so much extra time, right? Your barracks are delayed 30, 45 seconds. You're even more behind an infantryman. Obviously, your economy's better, but I think teching on the 6th sector is quite good. So that's really the whole video, everyone. That's really kind of what I wanted to talk about today, is just I wanted to compare these build orders to each other. We're not comparing this to other factions. We're not comparing this to other heroes. We're not comparing this to what's good or what's bad, what's overpowered or underpowered. We're just comparing these build orders against each other. So what did you think? I'd be happy to show these build orders off. I will most likely be coming up with the videos on the 6 racks and the 2 wood 2 food build orders. I will not be doing the 5 racks because, as I mentioned, and I will be linking it in the description below, the Nakamura 5 racks is already on his channel. So let me know what you thought. If you have any suggestions for what you'd like to see differently of the 10-minute build test series, let me know what you'd like to see, and I will see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye.